He sits on the Senate Taxes Committee, and he's here now to share his views on Senator Bach's tax proposal in even a more broad policy discussion. We have Senator Warren Limmer. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here again.
Beginning with Senator Bach's proposal, again, it would expand sales tax to clothing, and then down the road it would reduce the overall sales tax rate by 0.25%. Much of that revenue would be used to pay back the school shift. The rest would be used to shore up the general fund. Would you support this kind of legislation?
Well, devil's in the details, and I'd have to do a really fine read on this before I would give it my personal endorsement. Anytime we reduce a tax, that's a great first direction. But if we're just shifting to move the expenses off to someone else in order to keep our spending going strong in the state of Minnesota, I'm not so sure. You know, I brought up the subject of tax and spend reform on the Senate floor and the tax committees. I'm dogging these guys all the time. And I get a little annoyed by seeing year after year these things that are touted as major tax reform, and really it just continues to keep alive our tax and spend patterns in the state. It's just moving the shell game around a little bit, and yet nothing really changes in the state of Minnesota. And with the backdrop of competing businesses in different states, as well as in different countries, we've got a very long way to go to come up with real stability for the people of Minnesota.
And you are echoing what you had said in a joint committee a couple of weeks ago with Taxes and Finance, and essentially stated that, and this came right after the February forecast. You stated that if we are crafting our tax policies based on these forecasts, which are not always accurate and they don't always take into consideration external factors, we're on shaky ground to begin with. And you go on to say it begs the next question: where do we go and what do we rely on? How would you begin these discussions?
The world of videotape, you can't escape anything you say, but I stand by the very same words I said then. We have to make sure that whenever we make a prognostication based on economic factors, we have to make sure that that foundation that we lay is as accurate as possible. And in a world when economic changes can happen so fast and have such huge changes up and down on the graph paper, we have to make absolutely sure that we're taking a rather conservative perspective on where our revenue stream may come from, and then also we should have a conservative outlook on how we spend the people's money in the state. Otherwise, every year after, we may be inviting deficit after deficit after deficit, and I think that's exactly where we are now. We're looking at a $4 to $5 billion deficit next biennium, and we're still trying to fix the $1 billion shortfall this year.
And yet, can you really lay a foundation, using your words, knowing that some of these external factors can, as you said yourself, blow up any formula?
Can you lay a foundation? It's difficult unless you start inviting reform. You must have reform and change the way business does business on taxing and spending in the state of Minnesota, kind of independent of what the factors are that's laying out our future. When you consider that the state of Minnesota, according to the Chamber of Commerce, it says that we're number 43 in business climate, 43rd worst in the country for business climate in the entire nation. And when you think that we have competitors for our business all around the country that are producing a product, and with low government imposed costs, they can sell it cheaper, they can make more profit, it pushes our people right out of the state. They aren't going to live in a state and try and compete for business, corporations, when they can compete elsewhere. And that's not even to mention our international competition as well.
So given the idea of reform, how do you see it? If it were to change from how it is now to how you would like it crafted, where would some of the greatest impacts be?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is since the Ventura days, Minnesota revenue stream is dependent on a strong economic engine. If our businesses are good, if the economy is strong, we will have a strong cash flow. If the economy goes down, we go right into the tank with it, and then it triggers deficits every year thereafter. So a wise person would say, why are we on this same boat that keeps going over the rapids every year? I think we need to change boats.
And yet economies do ebb and flow, so how would you react to that?
Even in the Great Depression, the Minnesota economy fared fairly well. It's because we had a diversified economic condition in the state. We had lumber, we had mining, we had manufacturing, we had agriculture. We don't have that anymore. All of those major productions of past export product have shrunk. We're now service. We still do well in agriculture. We're the 8th strongest livestock and natural product exporter in the country, number 8. But because of technology, we don't employ that many people anymore. So we can't really rely on agriculture to do the same revenue production to the state of Minnesota. So now we're looking at other avenues. We need to do a baseline cut in corporate income tax across the board. And I think we need to do major cuts in gross revenue. Maybe 20, 30, 50% we should start considering. These are record-breaking numbers for a state like Minnesota. But as a result, the consequence is going to be we're going to be on the map as being a state that can be a friendly place for business. Look at the assets that we have. We have great education for our workforce. We've got a healthy workforce. We have a strong Midwest work ethic that we don't always find in other states. All of those elements are very attractive to business. It's just the bottom line impact on taxes and regulation in the state that's driving it.
Senator, I'm going to interject real quickly. We're almost out of time, but I do want to ask you, so you posed the question, how do you try to keep this discussion alive during session? Do you have an idea?
Well, I keep bringing this up in tax committee. I keep bringing it up on the Senate floor. I'm going to be doing more research in the interim, building the case. This is not going away. A strong family income comes from a strong economy and a strong business climate. We need to, if we take care of that, you know, it's like the old business model. You take care of the nickels and dimes, the dollars will take care of themselves. We've got to take that same approach to Minnesota's economy.
Okay, with that encapsulation, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.